ANC cadre deployment policy has come into sharp focus during National Chairperson Gwede Mantashe's testimony at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. He testified about the ANC's role in government and its parliamentary oversight in relation to allegations of state capture and corruption. Mantashe was questioned at length about the ANC's cadre deployment policy. He was the party's Secretary General from 2007 to 2017 before being elected National Chair at the party's 54th conference in 2017. Political economist Mandla Isaacs joins us now to discuss. Good to have you. Thanks so much for joining us, Mandla.
Thanks for having me, and good morning to your viewers.
So, evidence leader Alec Freund spent time seeking clarity on this ANC deployment policy. What do you think he was trying to get at with his line of questioning?
Well, as you know, the relationship between the ANC as the ruling party throughout our democracy and the state has been a common thread in political analysis over the years, and to what extent there's an unhealthy relationship between party and state. Are civil servants and aspects of the state working to advance the national interest, or are they working to advance the ANC's interest under the leadership of its deployees? And so as the commission explores issues of state capture and to what extent this state leadership, state resources, state authority, and state power has been diverted from the national interest, they appear to be exploring to what extent a unhealthy, perhaps, relationship between the ANC and the state may be partly to blame.
So what did you actually make of the disagreement over the two terms, cadre deployment and deployment policy? Mantashe explained his disagreement because, according to him, cadre deployment provides a very narrow connotation of the cadre policy.
Well, it was a very fascinating exchange politically. Obviously, cadre deployment has become something of a byword or a byphrase, if you will, for incompetence, and many analysts arguing that a big part of the dysfunction that we've seen in the state and of the corruption, poor governance, and our inability to achieve our development objectives is because incompetent cadres are deployed into positions all the way from national all the way down to local government for which they are not capable or qualified. And so Gwede Mantashe, being a very skilled politician and a very skilled debater, is very aware that this is a political platform that all of South Africa is watching. And so he's doing his best to undermine that narrative and to draw attention away. He obviously, as the chairman of the ANC and a skilled politician, does not want the idea of cadres, which in the public parlance has taken on a bit of a negative connotation. And so he's trying to rescue that to sort of the initial, perhaps party philosophical view of cadres being disciplined members of the movement that train, that are loyal, that have revolutionary consciousness, and that are prepared to achieve national developmental objectives wherever they are deployed. So he's trying to rescue that connotation of the term and take us away from this association with incompetence.
So, this whole issue of cadre deployment, it really has attracted criticism from those who believe that its implementation has been exposed to abuse. I'd love to know, what do you view this policy? What are your views on it?
So, look, in every democracy, in the government, you have political appointed positions where we understand that the ruling party appoints people that they trust, that they feel can carry out their mandate, that can help lead the government in achieving what they've promised to the citizenry during the elections, right? And so to use national government to narrow the focus there, we understand that ministers are politically appointed, deputy ministers are politically appointed. In fact, most of them have to come from the National Assembly. By the Constitution, the president cannot appoint many members to his cabinet from outside of the National Assembly. But then we understand that there is the civil service, and we all agree that we need to have a professional civil service that executes the policies of the government of the day, but is not itself politicized. And we understand that that when politicians come and go, that professional civil service should remain, and they serve all of South Africans, not just the members of a particular party or supporters of a political party. The challenge, though, is that the ANC does not stop just at those political appointees. We know that DGs very often have to be politically vetted by the ANC. The ANC determines politically who it wants in key positions throughout the state, from national to local government, as we said. And we have seen with the governance failures, the Auditor General, we've now become used to tens of billions of rands being lost to irregular expenditure every single year. And if you dig into those reports, one of the root causes is people who are clearly not qualified. They're not qualified in financial governance. They're not qualified in public administration. And when the ANC itself acknowledges that we don't have a capable state, we don't have a professional public service, the question becomes, in 27 years in power, why is that the case? Why do we not have a capable and professional civil service? And the argument is not that we're unable to recruit those individuals, because we have enormous human talent in South Africa. Analysts are saying, and those who have been in government are saying, because the ANC politicizes recruitment and hiring and insists not the most qualified people for the job be put in place, but that there be people who are loyal to the ANC, and that very often overcomes competence. And that is one of the most important root causes as to why we do not have a capable and professional public service at all levels.
You know, and this is, if we look a little deeper into it and things that have been uttered and said before, Mantashe said the ANC has never told its MPs to stop thinking and not to ask questions. But it's very contrary to what we hear. Not so long ago, there was the Deputy Minister of Transport who had also chaired the Parliamentary Transport Portfolio Committee, told the Commission that she always followed the instructions of the ANC that deployed her to Parliament because they have to toe the party line. Surely that in itself is a contradiction, on the same platform, basically contradicting each other.
Yes, Gwede Mantashe is not being honest, right? He's doing what he is supposed to do politically, which in his organization is to defend the ANC. That goes a long way in the organization, and that's what he's trying to achieve there. But we know he's not being honest. The commission itself has taken us into those deliberations when ANC officials like Gwede and now, of course, Mr. Magashule travel to Cape Town, meet the ANC caucus, and tell them what the party line is on high impact votes. We saw it with the many motions of no confidence against President Zuma. Dr. Khoza testified about the flack she came under for the scrutiny she was placing on public officials. We've seen it with ESCOM and SOEs, that routinely the ANC asks parliamentarians either to leave particular issues, to take it easy on certain politicians. And at the very least, as a fact, we know they were told to vote against motions of confidence into President Zuma. That's the reason the ANC didn't self-correct. That's the reason state capture was not stopped earlier. They've blamed it on this one personality, President Zuma. And let's not forget, while Mr. Mantashe is now a big supporter of President Ramaphosa, he was also a big supporter of President Zuma and defended him to the last. And one of his mechanisms was to go to Cape Town as the Secretary of General and tell the ANC caucus to vote against motions of no confidence into President Zuma. He was not being honest with us on that point.
Yeah, it is. It is hard to understand, where he was going with that one and to believe it, because another thing he said was that the deployment policy only deploys, it doesn't employ, and it's only a recommendation. Doesn't this sound like semantics, as deployed ends up in a place of employment? That's what happens.
It's a very interesting, and again, he's a skilled politician, right? So he's using the separation between party and state when it suits him to defend himself against the accusation that the ANC does not observe a strict separation between party and state. We know that most of the people in the ANC, NEC, and indeed in the senior leadership ranks of the ANC hold positions in the senior leadership of the state. So when you agree at Luthuli House on an ANC Monday that a cadre is going to be deployed into an area, well, guess who interviews DDGs, Leanne? It's ministers, and almost all of those ministers are NEC members. Mm-hmm. So certainly when the ANC makes decisions that they want to employ particular people as DGs or as DDGs or as senior executives at state-owned enterprises, for example, or in municipalities, they are aware that they have huge influence over the employment process where people are actually confirmed to those positions in the state. So he's being very economical with the truth there.
Yeah. I mean, on another issue, what did you think when Mantashe said that the party encourages its cadres to apply for judiciary positions? This, obviously, particularly at the back of Jessie Duarte's leaked recording where she was actually criticizing Justice Zondo, at the same time suggesting that Zuma must meet with Chief Justice Mogoeng.
So I think we have to separate those two issues. I was not hugely troubled with what Mr. Mantashe said on the question of the judiciary. So we do have a pretty robust process there. Remember, most of the political appointments in the executive are solely within the prerogative of political leaders like the president. So the president can pick his cabinet, and there's very little influence any of us can have. Whereas, of course, with the appointment of judges, it does have to go through the JSC. And even if the ANC may have the majority, other parties do get to influence that process. It is reasonable to say that, the ANC should be able to say it wants people that share its ideological viewpoints to be parts of the judiciary. We understand that the judiciary is contested. It contests constitutional decisions, public administration decisions, of course, commercial and decisions in the interpretation of laws. The judiciary is a very important branch of government in ours and in any other liberal democracy with separate branches of power. So it is separate but equal, in theory, branches of power. So it is reasonable for it is nothing untoward for the ANC to say, particularly as we want to transform the judiciary between one that was conservative and propped up the old order to one that truly embodies our constitutional values. I don't think it is untoward for Mr. Mantashe and the ANC to say they encourage their members to enter the legal system, to become judges, and to take up that space. As long as those members are qualified and competent, they go through the process, which there's no indication that they do not. But more importantly, that they then do not have any irregular or unlawful contact in the administration of cases, as we've seen bubbling under the charges against Judge Hlophe. That is a separate thing.
Completely. I mean, there was so much, I must say, that came out of it. I mean, also with regard to the step aside, I just want to touch on that before we wrap up, because I can see our time is running out. But the whole issue of, Gwede saying that he was not in favor of the Zuma step aside, the Mbeki step aside, and saying that he hopes that he never sees that again, and that was a bad move for the party. What did you make of that?
Well, it's an extremely uncomfortable situation that has arisen. It is frankly unhealthy for our democracy to have a precedent where elected presidents, where essentially that become the face of the campaign, that the ANC puts someone out front in 2014 and says, vote for this person, right? It's Zuma's face on the poster in 2014 national elections, no one else. And then 3 years later, just before the end of their term, again, because of the ANC's political dynamics, the ANC insists on having its conference 2 years before the election, national election, knowing there'll be these two centers of power, this uncomfortable arrangement, and then puts its interests before the country's interests, quite frankly. So political battles in the ANC then remove a sitting head of state. Now, many South Africans enjoyed it when President Zuma was removed because he had become very unpopular. But obviously it was much more contested under President Mbeki. And it becomes a very uncomfortable precedent where nakedly the power of the state, our democracy, is clearly comes second to political dynamics within the ANC. And it's become an uncomfortable practice, which is why he was struggling to defend it, because it's really not a way that we should run a democracy. And it's not something that we see in many other countries.
Yeah, indeed. Have to leave it there. I'd love to chat to you a little bit longer, but unfortunately we've got to leave it. Thank you so much for your views on that, talking very much so about this cadre deployment policy and what was said at the State Capture Commission yesterday, and also just quickly talking about that step-aside policy that we've seen happen for the last two presidents. So, yeah, Bloody Landers, Mandla Lionel, reflecting on Gwede Mantashe's testimony. All right, that's where we say goodbye to